What's up, board game people? This is the first of hopefully many to come. Today we're going to be unboxing Dungeon Crusade from Groovus Games, which is currently in the last week of its late backing run. I wanted to give you all a glance at this meticulously crafted game, while you still have a chance to grab it. Before I begin, I do not get any money from Groovus Games or any other game company for making my videos. The copy of the game I'm unboxing was provided with no stipulations or expectations by Groovus Games. All opinions are my own true opinions. This copy is from the first print run, and there will be some slight differences from the copy you'll receive with the reprint. It seems the game has only gotten better in the reprint, and I will have a video covering all of the changes and showing off the other two dungeons when my copy of the reprint arrives. I also have a few printed items from the reprint that I'll be sharing at the end of the video. This copy of the game is the Crusader of the Realm edition that comes with the Avalon Adventure Board Game in tow. This is essentially 2 games in 1. Really, it is 2 games in 1. And let me tell you, this thing is deceptively heavy for its size. I've never played Dungeon Crusade. I've watched some of Roger Deering's, the creator of Dungeon Crusade's, videos on the Groovus Games channel, and they're excellent at explaining how to play and the different systems of the game. I'm no expert though, and I likely will get things wrong as we look through the box and everything in it. If I have corrections to make after the video is published, you'll find them in the subtitles for the video. So you might want to turn those on. For me, an unboxing is all about the experience. This is the first time I'm laying my eyes on a game, and the box can either be a trove of fantastic potential, or it could be a nightmarish pile of generic garbage. I want the unboxing experience to make me excited to learn more about the game, make me anxious to play. The box for the game really sets the tone right out of the gate. The top color illustration is phenomenal. You see almost all the heroes and Albus the Fetchhound. Sadly, my camera doesn't do the colors on the cover justice. The artwork is superb, and the splash of color from the spells and the weapons clashing is so much more bright and vivid than shows on the video. You can tell right off the bat this isn't going to be some cartoony dungeon crawl, with the old forgotten prisoner hanging in the background and the bloody pentagram surrounded by candles under the wraith. It's staying true to its roots and doesn't seem to hold anything back. This is one of those pieces of artwork that the more you stare at it, the more you'll notice. The sides of the box are adorned with portraits of the heroes and a few select baddies. The back is where the action's all at. The back reminds me in so many good ways of getting a new video game when I was a kid, flipping it onto the back to get an idea of what the game was and to see the screenshots. The back has a quick lore blurb to convey the theme and tone. It has a shot of the entire game stretching across a huge game table. And then you get the quick list of components that you can expect to find inside. Now inside the box, we're starting to get to the good stuff. Right on top, we see the handbook, also the rulebook. This rulebook has been updated and streamlined in the reprint. We'll talk about that later. The rulebook is 69 pages long. It has a great index that works, and the table of contents is quite handy as well. At the back of the book, you'll find a map of the land of Avalon, which is handy if you want to find the villages you're protecting during each scenario. You also get a nice glimpse of all the different heroes in the very front. It's good to put some names to the faces. Next is the scenario book. I had completely forgotten the game had individual scenarios. There are 10 scenarios and the advanced setup guide in the scenario book. Advanced setup is basically the setup you'll need to do that's unique to your scenario and whatever customization you'd like to have. The scenarios themselves offer a spread of customization you can apply, or simply pick a difficulty level and set up according to the scenario and play. The next layer of the box is completely taken up by a set of 6 packaged double-sided map tiles. These tiles are huge and they look spectacular. We'll get a closer look at them in a bit. The next folded board is the Dungeon UI. The printing of the board is immaculate, and you can see the splashes of color being carried over here again. And again, my camera and my lighting just doesn't do it justice. The board is a little thin, printed on something just a bit thicker than cardstock, but I don't think it suffers at all for that. It's also much larger than I expected it to be. The other board of the same type of material is the town board. Again, the layout and theming on this board I love. The small town, the fact that your unlearned character abilities are in the academy, and the blessings come from the temple is just perfect. I wish the temple text said something about the service cost being a tithe instead of just looking more like a menu board, but that's a very, very minor gripe. After all that, there's a hefty stack of punch boards. The tokens and such punch out quite easily, and if you're super picky, they leave little to no tab, and I didn't have any tearing on any of the boards. This is where you start to see the sheer volume of the game. There are sheet after sheet after sheet of tokens, and even some larger items like the Tower Attack Celebration Day game board. The standees all have a tan-colored background and are printed double-sided, as are all the tokens. The standees are identical on both sides of the sheet, so no staring at ogre butts here. I think sometimes having a rear view on the back is nice so you understand facing, but it's not the end of the world. And again, no ogre butts. The illustration on the standees are spectacular. These guys look ready to attack and do some damage. I also love the variety of different standees. While there are repeats, the monster selection is looking quite nice. The doors are well done. You get 3 different types that you can arrange to match the section of dungeon you're in. As I'm thumbing through sheet after sheet of tokens, I start to realize this game is going to need some organization. The amount of tokens is purposeful, but these look like they could get out of hand quick. After a mountain of punch boards, we get to the small double-sided battle board for the Avalon Adventure Game. This is where you'll resolve quick battles, and both sides feel unique and look perfect. Then we get the Avalon Adventure Game Board. It folds up nice and compact for storage, and when laid flat, the seams disappear. For me, that's what I want to see happen. I hate when there are obvious seams destroying a wonderfully composed game board or map. From there, we get into the cards, and from this angle, it might not seem like a lot, but this is just a trick of the camera. There are so many cards of so many different types here. First up is our player boards. Here, there are 2 boards per hero showing all 3 levels of the hero's progression and a little backstory. The loot deck is massive. These individual decks were quite mixed up, so it's hard to get an idea of how many of each type of card you really have during the unboxing. But as you sort them out, you'll get the full picture. I started to find some trap cards and then a deck of hero ability cards. Again, there are many types of cards mixed into these packs. The individual packs are easy to open and don't seem to be flexing the cards, warping them away from flat. Next is the Celebration Day and mining cards. These are a bit smaller than the rest, which was a welcome change. The Guardian deck comes with some massive cards. These looked intimidating, which I assume was the idea. Then, tucked in on its own, we find Albus, the Fetch Hound. Albus was just kind of hanging out at the bottom of the box. Again, you get 3 levels to Albus, the Fetch Hound. I had no idea you could level him up, but now I want to know if he knows any tricks. On a side note, as soon as my wife saw the standee for Albus, she announced, "I want to be the dog!" I haven't had the heart to tell her it isn't one of the heroes yet. Again, with smaller cards, we get status effects. Honestly, I found while going through all the cards that the sizes were mostly appropriate for their contents. Status effects didn't need huge cards, so they were smaller. Quest cards needed to be larger to accommodate the text, so they were made larger. It's good design, really. Wasted space is kept to a minimum. The larger, almost index-sized cards are for the Avalon Adventure Board Game. There are truly enough cards here to keep the game interesting, and I believe they're double-sided as well. From the right section of the box, I find the minion cards, and a small stack of Cultist of Zul minion cards that are reprints to replace the Cultist of Zul cards in the minion deck. Then we get to a big bag full of standee bases of all different colors. I don't really know what bases go to what yet, so you'll have to forgive me if I use the wrong bases in this video. You also get a small pack of arrow sliders that are used at the bottom and the top of the player boards. And last, there's a big old bag of dice. At first glance, I see D6s, D12s, D3s, D10s, and at least one D20. There's also one special custom dice floating around in there. That's the Monster Patrol Route dice. You can pick up extra patrol dice in a couple different flavors in the Pledge Manager for the reprint. So after the dice, we're left with a nice empty box. Sadly, the cardboard divider in mine isn't really holding up too well. In all honesty, it looked like this when I opened it. It won't hold up with the amount of components and cards that it's going to be subjected to. It's going to be destroyed with the quickness. This is likely my biggest gripe for the entire unboxing. And you know, if that's the worst I find, this is going to be a great game. You want something akin to a plastic insert here, at minimum to hold the cards. But in a project like this, that is on Kickstarter with the intention of raising money to make a dream of a game come true, you can only do what the money allows for. There's little to no custom plastic work that was done for this game, and adding on a potential new manufacturer to the project just for this purpose would have been expensive. We'll examine this a bit more later. So after finding my way to the bottom of the box, I want to break open the decks of cards and see what all we're working with. I found out pretty quick that the decks of cards held multiple different flavors and almost random distribution. I think it's likely from the way the cards were arranged on the sheet. They're probably cut and stacked with the cards from neighboring sheets until the deck was the right size to be packaged. So, a little time for organization is going to be necessary. Make sure you have plenty of room to spread out the cards and sort them. As the stacks of cards grow in number, I'm seeing the scope of the game. What I love about these is that the art is very consistent from card to card and card type to card type. The backs change dramatically, but they're all indicative of what the cards are, and they stay 100% on theme. There's nothing generic about any of these cards. The loot deck is massive. I knew coming in that this game was all about loot, but really seeing it with my own eyes is a little bit different. And some of these loot cards are wicked nice. The array of weapons and items is amazing, and the art and details steps it up a notch with each jump in item rarity, and that's greatly appreciated. That being said, even the common or uncommon items look fantastic. In all, there were about 4.5 stacks of traditional playing card sized cards that you'll need to organize. It was easy going and took me about all of 15 minutes to complete while filming. I think as I get a chance to play that I'll find some of these decks can easily be combined for storage and convenience. Oh, and if you're still paying attention, I accidentally created 2 stacks for the Archer, which confounded me for quite a bit later on. One of the remaining larger packs of cards is all the cards for the Avalon Adventure game. These are double-sided with a lot of text. I read through a few of the random cards, and the writing is really well done and intriguing. I can see having quite a bit of different adventures before arriving at the dungeon. The stack of Guardian cards ranged from level 1 to level 4, and they were mixed up a bit, but they were packaged all together. In the end, there's an impressive array of cards waiting to be explored. Some of my stacks will be combined, but I go into unboxings pretty well blind, so I don't ruin anything for myself. So sometimes I'll make mistakes. After the cards, I took about 15 to 20 minutes off camera to punch out and separate all the tokens and standees. The tokens have a great variety, and I discovered they're all useful in visualizing things both inside the dungeon and on the dungeon UI and village boards. I laid everything out so I could get the full scope of what comes in the box, and I will say it's quite impressive. There's a reason this little box weighs so much. Now, before I could be done for the night, I had to pack all of this up because our kittens will taste anything not timed down, and one loves to munch on plastic. I decided to go for sandwich bags and snack bags to start off with. The good old classic approach. It isn't pretty, but it works. Then comes the challenge of putting everything back into the box in a way that the lid will actually close. After a little convincing, I was able to get the lid on with just a 0.5 centimeter of lid lift. Not bad for stuffing 50-ish plastic bags in there. Now let's take a quick but better look at the components, starting with those for the Avalon Adventure Board Game. I'm going to move fast, so feel free to pause the video to get a closer look. The base of every board game is a good game board, and this one fits the bill. The artwork is excellent, and there are so many details to discover scattered around the map. Next, we have our dice. Setup says use the dice, so we grab the whole bag. The small battle board is used for resolving conflicts during the adventure game. Several piles of loot are available throughout the game, and remember, whatever your heroes find, they take with them to Dungeon Crusade. All the monsters are called for. Looking at these standees, I think would change the mind of many standee haters. The artwork here is detailed and gritty. The monsters even cast shadows under them. When you get a few on the dungeon board, it really comes to life. The background is a color that I usually avoid. Tan just looks old and extremely overdone. The style is perfect though, and it helps them to stand out on the table against the detailed dungeon tiles. You'll also need a set of 4 doors. The doors are all interchangeable. If a door is special and needed in Dungeon Crusade, you'll be instructed to change the base color. The variety of the 3 doors looks great in the dungeon. Next are a stack of rejuvenation potions. The backs of these tell the effect of the potion. The board has markers for where to place loot cards to keep things organized, and along the top for explored and unexplored cards. The small banner standee is used for the Avalon Adventure game. Spread across the map are the runestone tokens. You'll also need the level 1 hero cards for all the heroes. The small white clips are used at the top and the bottom of these cards to track the stats. The art again is really nice, and the UI on the player boards is highly functional and reminds me a bit of the older Diablo games. Last, we have the character standees. The characters continue the art style of the monsters, but they're easy to tell apart. They just look like heroes to me. This is a party I would welcome into any D&D or Pathfinder campaign. The women here extrude strength and power. They aren't your typical skimpily armored fantasy trollops. These ladies mean business. The overall setup for the Avalon Adventure game took around 20 minutes. Most of that time was wasted digging and searching through my now massive pile of plastic bags. Honestly, with a good organizer, I could take this down to about 10 minutes to table. The table size for this is also much smaller than Dungeon Crusade, taking roughly 2.5 feet by maybe 3 feet of space, and even that could be reduced if needed. As soon as it was set up, my wife wanted to dig right in. Sadly, I didn't have the time for that just yet. We still have Dungeon Crusade to get set up. Dungeon Crusade and Avalon Adventure use many of the same components, so if you're transitioning from one to the other, you already have some of the components for Dungeon Crusade set out. First, let's take a look at the dungeon tiles. Each dungeon map consists of 6 roughly 12 by 12 tiles laid out in a grid. I'm an idiot, and I got a little frustrated at first trying to figure out how they all went together. I first noticed the border around the tiles, which helped to get some in place, but I knew there had to be a better way. After almost having the first map completely assembled, I realized that there's small text labeling the chambers all over the map. This text always needs to be the right side up, as if you're standing at the bottom of the dungeon and looking on it. That made getting them into place a snap. The Tomb of Kaladin is my personal favorite of those included with the core game. Every inch of the dungeon looks like an old school dungeon crawler should. Blood everywhere, bones of the unfortunate heroes who've come before you, and a wonderful torture chamber, and even spike traps bloody and recessed into the floor. My wife's favorite was the Ancient Runes dungeon map. This one at first came off to me as a little too colorful, but when you have the map laid out before you with the doors and tokens spread across it, those colors become an eerie mood lighting. It really helps set the different sections of the dungeon apart, and it's quite striking. This map doesn't lack for detail either. Seeing these two made me want the other 2 dungeons that much more. Next to the dungeon map, you'll find the village board and then the dungeon UI board. These boards are extremely functional. They end up justifying both their size and place on the table. The layouts are quite nice, and the cards are around the edge to keep them away from the tracking tokens in the middle. You aren't constantly knocking those trackers around. The theming and functionality of these really did surprise me. Next, we have our rulebook. This gets quite a massive update with the upcoming reprint, so I won't harp on anything too long here, but rather go through some of the changes that stood out to me at the end of the video. The scenario book I already talked about. It was a pleasant surprise to find. The book already started bringing many of those pieces I'd seen in Roger's videos to life. I'll warn you that while there is 10 scenarios in the book, the core game only supports, I believe, 6 of those scenarios. You'll need the other 2 dungeon maps for the rest. I highly recommend getting those as well. To get them with a core pledge, you need to add the double dungeon expansion pack, which runs $40. The Tower Attack minigame board is used for Celebration Day. I haven't had a chance to look into how it's played, but it looks like a quick way to make some extra gold. Here we have the blessing cards. These sit next to the temple on the village board. I love the backs of these. They're another bright card that almost looks like there's a tiny little light burning in there. The champions come in 4 different levels. I found when setting up that it would be better if you just store all of these in a bag together. They aren't really going to mix up, and you can pull them out and arrange them easily. Did someone say loot? This game has so much beautiful and deadly loot. Mining is another interesting aspect of the game. The pickaxe can dull, and the gems from mining can add some amazing effects to weapons. Again, with the Guardian cards, you have 4 different difficulty levels. The symbols on all the minions, champions, and Guardian cards are easily read and interpreted. There were fewer tavern tasks than I expected, but for setup at least you start with 1 available, so there may be no need for a large stack of them. The celebration cards also seem as though they'll really help the party along. The backs on the celebration cards are the only ones that stick out from the other cards with their bright colors and happy villagers on them. But heck, it's a celebration day. Let them have their color. Minions only come in 3 difficulties. Here we have the Encounter, Trap, Treasure Chests, and Secret Room cards. The backs of these cards are really unique and well themed. The status cards have great and simple line-drawn illustrations that seem spot on. The hero ability cards come in 3 different levels, and you'll be learning new abilities at the academy as you progress. And then there's Albus. Even he has 3 separate levels and a short backstory on the back of his level 1 card. The quest cards are great. One side has a story blurb for the quest, and the other has objectives and setup rules for that quest. I wish the symbols were a bit bigger on these though. The quick reference cards should come in handy. They're double-sided and there are 2 versions for each player. The dice are the normal fare of dice, excluding the Monster Patrol dice. There are round edges, which I prefer. Coins come in 3 denominations, with copper being 100, silver being 500, and gold being worth 1,000. There are plenty of supplies and potions to be found along the way. You're going to need them in the dark, cold dungeons. There's so many different quest items. This is the part of the setup that can slow you down a bit. Having to search for the right quest item can be a bit of a pain, but I don't know an easy solution to fix that problem. Lockpicking was one of the many reasons I really started paying attention to Dungeon Crusade. There aren't many games with a lockpicking mechanic that pull it off like DC does. Crates come in 2 flavors. Some have backsides with other symbols, and some are double-sided with crates on both sides. These are the master crates that you'll be using during dungeon seeding. The quest markers are pretty straightforward and serve their purpose well. There are all kinds of markers to use, and I'll be honest, I haven't the slightest clue which is which so far. Here we have the mining tokens, locked tokens, orbs, runestones, web tokens, and a few I don't know what they are yet. There's so many monster tokens with so many different effects. The purple swirls really show up well on the map, and it will be covered in them. Finally, we have the raid phase, tracking, and initiative tokens. So let's see that dungeon setup and talk about it. This is one of the most common issues people have with Dungeon Crusade when browsing forums and such. Dungeon Crusade takes quite a while to set up. Again, with me and my pile of useless plastic bags, I was having to find the tokens, then figure out what needed to be done with them. In the original rulebook, there's a very clearly worded section near the front of the book that will take you step by step through the basic setup of the game. This was pretty simple and straightforward. This is the stuff you'll do for most of your Dungeon Crusade games. Lay out the map tiles, cover the door markers with doors, place treasure chests and mining tokens, spread out your monster decks in a way that suits your table and setup, and set up the village and dungeon UI boards. It sounds like a lot more than it really is. All told, as a first-time newbie, it took me an hour to get the game set up as you see. Now that I've done it once, I know I could cut that down by at least 15 minutes. Honestly, I spent most of the time playing Where's Waldo with the mining markers and treasure chests that are printed on the map. Once you know what to look for, though, it's simple. I know many people don't have the stomach for that, though. I don't mind longer setup times because I'm free to leave my game out for weeks on end if I like. If you don't have a dedicated table, setup time is likely way more important for you. Here, I come back to the game really and truly needing some sort of organization. I'd love to find someone who's made a printable organizer, or even someone selling wooden organizers. I'd pay good money for a functional one. And if I could find a good functional insert, I'm positive 2 people could set the game up in 20 to 25 minutes flat. I know that sounds outrageous to some, but I believe it to be true. This is a game you'll see more videos on as I figure out storage organization and the deluxeification options for it. I already have some ideas, such as a simple set of card holders and some generic token trays to start off with. I will be searching for small treasure chests and mining mounds with little pickaxes that I can print and paint. Finding them in the right scale, though, may be difficult. I may have to whip out Blender and make them myself. Whatever I find or end up with, you can be sure I'll share it with all of you. One thing I'd love to see from Groovus Games is a set of themed home printable card dividers. I think they'd make a world of difference when thumbing through all the cards. I also absolutely loved the initial unboxing and organization guide you found at the very top of the Oathsworn box. It went into fantastic detail on how they suggest you organize the cards and components when you're going through the initial unboxing. Something similar with some ideas on how to best organize the cards and tokens could go a long way. It's too late for something like that to be added to the reprint, but it could be made available for download or print online. Another complaint that's clear as day is the table size required to play. Yes, this is a table hog. The dungeon map alone is quite large. Thankfully, you don't have to have everything located on a single table or on the table all at once. You can easily table the map on your bigger table and use small TV tray type tables to support players, the village and dungeon UI boards, and even the monster decks. The monster decks can also remain stacked and in the box if need be. There's no need to set out all the standees. They can wait in the box until they're needed as well. I'm truly starting to see the awesome potential of the game. Seeing it spread out across my table is impressive and has me pumped to play. I think as unboxing goes, this was a great experience that achieved the goal of whetting my appetite for the game, getting me interested and invested, and ultimately getting me excited to play as soon as possible. Before I go, I have a little extra to add on to this unboxing. Roger sent me over a few of the new components that are included with the reprint and are huge boons to quality of life of the game. These are all prototype boards and the logos will be removed on these boards before they're printed. These were printed on my printer at home, which is no great shakes. First up is the Mercenary Camp. That's a sideboard that can be used with the Village board in the Solo Crusader mode. In Solo Crusader, you'll be able to pick just one hero, and you and Albus will go it alone. The Mercenary Camp allows you to hire extra companions to aid you in your quests. These mercenaries are a way of streamlining play of multiple characters, giving a faster and snappier experience for solo play. Next, we have the Minion Movement Speed Track. This gives more of an intelligence to how the minions move around the map. To use the board, you roll a d6 at the start of the minion's turn. That d6 will show you on the track which dice should be rolled for the minion's movement. Roll that dice and add the results to the minion's base movement speed. You can choose to use the same d6 result for each minion that turn, or you could roll a d6 for each minion. The choice is entirely up to you. Then we have the Scalable Difficulty Reference card. The back of this card is used to create a much more balanced outcome when playing the game. I could see these rules really helping out a lot when you're in a pinch and near your last breath. The card basically provides rules that balance out events and challenges in the encounter deck, and treasure chests and trap cards. Depending on your hero's level, you'll modify the required roles for these cards. Last, he sent over a newer copy of the reprint's rulebook than I had seen before. Let's talk quick about some notable changes between the two that are evident to my tiny noob brain. First off, the rulebook is shorter in length. This version is sitting at 52 pages, down from 69 in the original print run. There are more graphics and graphical explanations than I saw previously. The component reference chart is a bit more traditional style now, instead of listing each component and explaining it on the spot. They are individually named, so finding what you're looking for should be much faster and require less thumbing back and forth. It contains a new Solo Crusader mode. The combat system has been significantly revised. The revision aims at greatly reducing playtime, but you're free to choose between this and the classic as you like. Avalon Adventure has been moved to the beginning of the book instead of existing around the end. Setup has been streamlined a bit, and the advanced setup is now in the handbook instead of the scenario book. And all of that just scratches the surface of the total changes. Overall, I said in my campaign guide that I was pretty much all in on this one with an add-on or two, and the Slayer of the Realm edition of the reprint. After doing this unboxing, I'm heading back to add some more dice, the quest marker tokens, and the arrow bases. Dungeon Crusade has a long and epic future ahead of it in my collection. I'm sold. So that's it. This is my first real unboxing video for a full game. I hope it was both informative and entertaining. This is a format that I'll be tweaking and playing with moving forward. I already have some ideas on how to change it for the better, but I'd love to hear from you all what you think, and what you might include, eliminate, or change. Every opinion is gold when you're starting something new like this. This is just the beginning of my coverage for Dungeon Crusade. You'll be seeing short deluxification videos for this game and many others. I'll also keep everyone informed of the changes I make to the storage or organization solutions I find. If you have a good solution or idea, let me and Groovus Games know. I know Roger will be around in the comments. He's one of the nicest people you'll have the pleasure to talk with in this industry. and he truly cares about the fans. Thanks again to Roger and the whole of Groovus Games for giving me this opportunity and making such an astounding game. There's a review in the far future, but first I need to go from noob to master. If you want to hop into this amazing game, go on over to Groovus Games Pledge Manager and check it out for yourself. I'll put a link in the video description below. One last reminder, while the copy of the game I unboxed was provided to me by Groovus Games, all criticisms, comments, and opinions were truly my own and completely unfiltered. Thank you to everyone watching and commenting. If you haven't already, please subscribe and hit that like button to help our channel grow and reach other gamers like yourself. Have a great night, be safe, and play something epic tonight. I know I will be.